History of Programming Part 2. The need for low-level programming languages or system programming languages was created by the rise in the use of high-level languages. These languages offer facilities between assembly languages and high-level languages to varied degrees. They offer higher-level control structures and error checking, while still being able to be used for tasks that require direct access to hardware facilities. The majority of the current linguistic paradigms were developed between the 1960s and the late 1970s. The revised report on the algorithmic language ALGOL 60 became a template for how later language specifications were prepared. ALGOL improved both organized procedural programming and the discipline of language specification. The first dynamically typed functional programming language was Lisp, which was introduced in 1958. Simula was the first language created to allow object-oriented programming in the 1960s, and Smaltic was the next to do so in the middle of the 1970s as the first pure object-oriented language. C is still widely used today because it was created between 1969 and 1973 as a system programming language for the Unix operating system. The first logic programming language was called Prolog, and it was created in 1972. In 1978, ML created the first statically typed functional programming languages by layering a polymorphic type system on top of Lisp. Each of these languages produced offspring, and the majority of contemporary programming languages can trace at least one of them as an ancestor. The advantages of structured programming and whether programming languages should be created to accommodate it were also hotly contested topics in the 1960s and 1970s. In a well-known 1968 letter that was printed in Communications of the ACM, Edsger Dijkstra suggested that all higher-level programming languages should do away with Godot statements. Growth. The 1980s saw a certain amount of consolidation. Object-oriented and systems programming were integrated in C++. Ada is a systems programming language evolved from Pascal that the U.S. government standardized for use by defense contractors. Large sums of money were invested in research on the so-called fifth-generation languages, which included logic programming elements, in Japan and other countries. The ML and Lisp communities worked to standardize them. All of these movements developed on the concepts created in earlier decades, rather than creating brand new paradigms. The 1980s saw a rise in the use of modules or large-scale organizational units of code, which was a significant development in language design for programming large-scale systems. In the 1980s, Modula 2, Ada, and ML all produced notable module systems that were frequently tied to generic programming techniques. In the middle of the 1990s, the internet expanded quickly, opening doors for new languages. Dynamic websites often use Perl, a Unix scripting tool that was initially released in 1987. With the promise of write once, run anywhere, bytecode virtual machines returned to being widely utilized in business contexts, and Java was adopted for server-side programming. These advancements weren't very original, rather, they were improvements to a variety of already used languages and paradigms.